welcome to the Much and Hutch podcast. I am Mary Hodson, president of the Chamber of Commerce here in Hutchinson, Minnesota, where we are having a gloriously sunny day. You can catch this podcast in a variety of locations, but if you go to kduz.com, that is where you're going to find it most of the time. And with me today, I wanted to teach you a little bit about economic development, so I called in the expert, Miles Seppelt. Welcome.
Thank you.
So glad that you're here. You and I work together a lot, and we actually get along.
Imagine that.
I know.
That's crazy.
I know, it is
Maybe
crazy.
we missed a memo. Because we're not supposed to.
Because we're not supposed to,
Right.
yeah. Well, and we say that jokingly because we're very fortunate in this community to have such collaborative
Yes.
relationships.
Yes.
So,
Yep.
glad
I
about
think it
that.
goes back to the people. So
Well, you know, you're pretty awesome.
the people. No, I think it's. I think there's a lot of awesomeness to go
There's
around.
a lot of
so,
it, yep.
Yeah.
So in Hutchinson, Minnesota, we do have a lot of organizations that work together really well. And so from the city to EDA to our education to the chamber to private businesses
And
to
everything in between.
the nonprofits, everything like that. So
Yep.
today let's just talk a little bit, let's dive into the economic development, because a lot of people don't understand what that means. They don't understand how that affects the regular citizen of Hutchinson, Minnesota.
Okay. Okay.
So let's dive into that a little bit.
Okay.
And why don't you just kind of, we can take a company X
Yep.
that's calling you and saying, hey, we might be interested in Hutchinson, Minnesota as a manufacturing plant. Can you help us? What happens? How does that work?
Well, that's a good question.
It's all magic, mirrors.
Right. Smoke. Plenty of smoke and mirrors, and then when something good happens, then you leap in front and jump in front of that parade. And
Yeah.
Yes. I think a question would be, why do we do economic development? What is economic development? And really, at the most basic level, it's creating jobs, it's raising incomes, and it's expanding the tax base of the community, right? It's about making a more prosperous Hutchinson. That's why we do this thing. When a company contacts me, the first thing that I'm thinking about is what is the company looking for? What do they need? Is Hutchinson a good fit? Because it may not be. And it goes both ways. Is the company a good fit for Hutchinson? Mostly what I'm looking for, if it's a well-run company, because we don't want to take a risk on somebody if they don't know what they're doing. I mean, sometimes people call me up and they're just looking for money, and if that's the start of the conversation, it's usually not going to be a great one. But most of the time for us, it's companies that are looking to grow and expand, and they want to know what are the options in a particular community. What are the options in Hutchinson? So we talk about that, and we talk about how this could be potentially a good fit. So it's a win for the company, and it's a win for Hutchinson. And everything that we do, we think in terms of cost benefit. Is there enough benefit to this project to make it worth our while? And not everyone meets that standard. We have limited resources as a city, as a community, as an economic development authority, and we got to be really careful how we leverage those resources so that we get the most bang for the buck, that we get the most benefit for our community that we possibly can. So what I'm wanting to know from the company is job creation. How many jobs are going to come out of this? What's going to be the investment in our community? What kind of wages do these jobs pay? We want good paying jobs, obviously, because that helps bolster the prosperity of our community. And is what they're doing going to be a good fit for Minnesota's manufacturing city? So I think that's kind of where the conversation begins.
Because now you've mentioned it a couple of times, when they call for money, we have limited funds. So the economic development, let's talk about that financial support or being part of somebody's business plan.
Yep. And when it comes to economic development and finance, there's sort of maybe a stereotype out there that you know, it's all about money and we're just throwing money at these guys or whatever, and it's not that at all, really. These are always good projects that maybe need a little push to get over the hump to be good. I mean, really kind of the guiding criteria is that if the project wouldn't happen but for public assistance to get them over the hump, get that last little piece tucked into place so that the project can happen, that's where we get involved. It's really at the margin, at the edge, where we can just kind of push them over the hump and make a good project happen. So that's where we fit in, or make a project happen in Hutchinson, because obviously companies, especially in 2020, they have other options. There's other communities, there's other states, a lot of other options for companies to look at, and obviously we want them here in Hutchinson, assuming it's a good company and a good fit. What can we do to make that happen? So we got to be economically competitive with other places too. So there is that element that goes into it. Yeah, that's all I'm gonna say.
Okay. So one of the things that I know, a myth, you know, one of those perceptions that's out there, you know, why haven't you filled a certain building?
Oh.
Why haven't you, you know, well, can you go get?
Right.
Why don't you talk about that?
Yes. You know, here in Hutchinson, I mean, because we have limited resources and because we want to get the most bang for our buck, as it were, in economic development, our focus is really on manufacturing companies, because manufacturing companies have the best pay scales. And we want good, high-paying jobs, because if we get a lot of new jobs created that pay well, that's going to put a lot of money into the economy, and then that generates the demand that gets you a Kohl's or some other retail store, or, you know, a new beauty salon or whatever it is. So we don't, you know, the way I kind of explain it is, I think of like a train. Industry, that's the engine of the train, that pulls everything else. And the better you have in your manufacturing sector, then you get more retail businesses automatically, you get more commercial service type businesses automatically, because they will naturally come to wherever good paying jobs are being created. Right? If the demand is there, that's what gets you your Kohl's department store, or take your pick, whatever it is, or your certain restaurant. And I'll be blunt, it's a fool's errand to go out and say, okay, we're going to go out and try and recruit a restaurant, take your pick. Because it just doesn't work like that. You got to create the demand. If you create the demand, then you get the restaurant. Then you get the clothing store, whatever it is.
That's when they come.
Yes.
Yeah, so thank you for helping clarify that, because I know that you and I both hear that all the time. When are you going to go and get somebody to come in for this space? Or why don't we have X, Y, Z?
Take a pick, yes.
Right. It's not up to the chamber or EDA or even the city. The city gets it too. We talk about that with Matt.
Yep.
We're not out recruiting.
It just doesn't work like that.
Doesn't work that
No.
way.
I mean, the best thing that we can do to position ourselves for success is to be as ready and be as attractive as possible for when they come poking around, and be ready to react for when that phone call comes or we get that inquiry, that we have what they're looking for. That's the way that we're going to succeed.
This is the part I love about talking with you, because I ask a simple question because I know how you're going to answer, and then you're going to lead me right into my very next question. I don't even know that I need to be here right now. So you said we need to be ready.
Yes.
So can you share what that means in Hutchinson, Minnesota, to be ready when that phone call comes?
Okay, there's a number of different things. And one of the key ones is community amenities, believe it or not. Because, you know, we're in an economy where unemployment is what, 3.5% or 3.7%, whatever. Companies can pick anywhere they want to locate. And so then they're going to be thinking about, wait a minute, unemployment's super low. I've got to figure out how I'm going to get a workforce. Then they start thinking, how do I get a workforce? What does the workforce want? They want parks and trails. They want aquatic centers. They want a nice school system. Those are the things that are actually very high on the list when companies are evaluating a community, because they've got to be able to recruit staff to come and work at the company. The staff, in turn, is going to be looking for amenities because they want to raise a family and have a nice life. And, you know, when unemployment's 3.5%, I mean, workers can go anywhere they want. And so how do we stand out compared to other cities? How does Hutchinson compare to the Wilmers or the New Ulms or the Twin Cities or the St. Clouds, whatever it is? And if we don't compare well, we're not going to get the workers. If we don't get the workers, we're not getting the company.
Right. Number 1 and 2 things that individuals look for in a community is amenities and aesthetics.
Mm-hmm. It's got to look nice. It's got to be nice.
It's got to be nice. Number 3 is openness. Schools and education are in the top 10.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it's really important. Now there's other things that you do specifically.
Mm-hmm.
You want to talk about that?
You have to help me a little.
Well, the Enterprise Center.
Oh,
shovel-ready industrial park.
Okay, that all curls back to being ready. I mean,
Yep.
it's because the way that we win in economic development is by having what companies are looking for, and then the other city doesn't. Mm-hmm. And if that's the case, we win. So that's why we went and invested to have an industrial park that is available and ready to go today. I mean, if a company calls me up, I can say, yes, we've got land available. We can sign a purchase agreement tomorrow if you want to, because we're that ready. And that's what companies want to hear. So it's about having land available. It's about having building space available. It's about having workforce available, which is Tiger Path.
Yep.
If we have those things and the other city, the competition doesn't, we win. End of story.
Yeah.
So for us, it's about being as ready as possible.
Right. I've heard you say before, it's having enough carrots that they want to come here. And we know that that works because we've had businesses choose Hutchinson simply because you've got space, we've got, whether it's a building or it's land, the reuse of the property up on the north side that was formerly HTI, that was repurposed by another company. It happened to work just perfectly for Uponor. There are people who are looking at the land. There's all sorts of opportunities.
Yes, I mean, and that's
for any size business.
Yes, yep, and that's, we have the Hutchinson Enterprise Center. That's all about taking early stage companies, startup companies, and we put them into an environment where the cost is very low, and then we add in a whole bunch of business education to go with that. The idea being to grow them up, and then we move them out, bring in the next crop. So, the number of communities in Minnesota that are doing business incubation the way that we do, I think it's about 1, Hutchinson. So, but that gives us a competitive advantage, right? I mean, because here, we have to grow. I mean, if we're going to grow our community, we got to kind of do it ourselves. It's almost, we got to roll up our sleeves and say, we're going to do this thing. And so the Enterprise Center, that's about growing companies ourselves, because it's just not, we just can't really bank on having big prospects coming down the road on a regular basis. I mean, we like that obviously, but you might not be able to make a living doing that. So we got to be able to grow ourselves and grow our own companies, and that's where the Enterprise Center comes in.
Well, I think it's, again, it's an example of how Hutchinson is really good at creating its own solutions to challenges, right?
Yep.
The problem is, the challenge is, we need businesses. So the EDA said, well, we'll build an incubator, help them, and then when they graduate, just like the kiddos, okay,
we'll move them out next door.
We're gonna get them next door, build a building for them.
Help them build a building, and then we'll repeat the process. So we'll see. I mean, we've got 3 companies in the Enterprise Center now, and they're doing well, and we'll see in a few years how that plays out.
Right, and it's not as if you're not out and about this lovely piece right here, right? It's not like you're not out telling people that we're an option.
Right, because
It's not that you're just not going door to door or phone call to phone call to say, hey, do you want to move to Hutchinson?
Yeah, I mean, that just doesn't work.
It's about planting seeds.
Right.
Miles is very, very good about planting seeds.
Yep.
And then it then perpetuates the opportunity.
Right. I mean, we want to build, and that, we do market and promote the community. And I'd say 96% of that is through the EDA website, because that's how companies are doing their research. They're scouting around the internet. So we established a brand as Minnesota's Manufacturing City, and we promote that brand every chance we get. And our goal is just to be on the radar somewhere that companies might pick up, might come visit the website, might make a phone call, might drop by, whatever it is. And that has worked. I mean, that's been successful, and I think we're just still gaining momentum in that area. So I feel very good about that. The thing when it comes to, when companies expand, that's typically a very closely guarded secret within the company. And especially if it's a publicly held company with shares that people can buy and sell, they can't put that information out. And so it just doesn't, that's just kind of a mischaracterization, I guess. It's not me going out prospecting, because there's no way I can know who's thinking about an expansion, who's thinking about whatever. That's all top secret information. I would never find that out. So again, the secret is to build our brand, build up our profile so that people know us. And I think, we're making progress. I mean, we do get mentioned, Minnesota's Manufacturing City, Hutchinson. That's the type of thing that gets some executive with some company going, well, why are they Minnesota's Manufacturing City? Maybe I need to check this out. And then they go find our website, and then they find out that we have everything that they're looking for. And then, boom, I get the phone call, and we're off and running.
So a lot of times when a business is looking to relocate, expand, have new space, it's kind of like an individual or a couple who are looking for a new house. Here's my checklist of the things that I want and need. And they come into a community and they're working on checking off the boxes. That's really what it comes down to. Yep,
and number one on that list is skilled workforce. I spend a lot of time working with our schools, working with Ridgewater College, working with our high school and our middle school on Tiger Path. And, I would say that's pretty close to the top one thing that I work on, is working on building up Tiger Path, because that's the number one thing that manufacturers are worried about, skilled workforce. That's the number one thing that corporate site selectors are looking at when they're trying to find options for a company that's looking to expand. The top thing on their list is, what is this community doing for skilled workforce? And so that's why we partner with the Chamber in a big way, partner with local companies, businesses of every type, partner with Ridgewater College, partner with the high school to do Tiger Path. And that's been going really well, and I think we're becoming famous for that, and that's going to help us.
Wait a minute, you think we're becoming? Think and becoming are not two words in that sentence right now. That go together? Because I can tell you, we are now known.
Yeah.
And we are known.
And that goes back to, if we have the answer and our neighbors don't, we win. And so that's why we're doing Tiger Path, because we can say, and we can document, companies can solve their skilled workforce problem. They can get the skilled workers they need in Hutchinson, because we're being intentional about developing this workforce.
When businesses are looking for locations, Hutchinson is so unique in many aspects. But when we talk about the school program, when we talk about Tiger Path specifically, number one, I get all bursty with pride, right? And I know you do, because Miles has gotten a collection of awards for economic development. Like, we should take a picture of him, like, trying to juggle all these awards. But it is the opportunity that we provide students, that the school now provides students. And the shop classes were tucked back in the corner. They are now the technical excellence. It's the Center for Technical Excellence. Everybody can see it. It's up front and center. And that is happening in Hutchinson, while schools across the state and frankly America are closing out those classes and don't even offer them anymore.
Oh, I know a neighboring, I wouldn't say a neighboring, but there's a community not far away that just built a $100 million high school. There's no technical education, anything in that building. There's no shop class, there's no welding class, there's nothing. And what people need to realize is that in Minnesota, 82% of all the jobs are in the technical areas. I mean, let me back up. Only 18% of jobs in Minnesota require a 4-year degree or higher. 82%, a 2-year degree or less, and you're good to go. Yeah. It's all about having a skill. What can you do as a skill? 82% of the time, that's what's going to get you a job. That's what's going to get you going on a good, high-paying career. This whole go to college thing, for 1/5 of the population, great. Go to college because that's the best fit. For 4/5, it should really be go to a Ridgewater, pick up a trade, learn a skill, because that's what the economy needs. That's where the jobs really are.
And that's why several businesses now have training in their business or within their business because they are so desperate for workers that they'll take the time and the money to train them instead of going into a 9 or 1 year 9-month or 1 year program or a 2-year program. They're saying, hey, come, we'll take care of you, because that's what they need. And so there is a huge disconnect, but it's a paradigm shift of thought.
Yeah. I mean, it's really just changing the way that we think about things. And I get it. I mean, back in the 1970s, I mean, you watch the news and it seemed like every night there'd be a story about the Rust Belt and factories closing and massive layoffs and all these types of things. And so, you know, if you were growing up with that in the 70s, you're a parent now, and so that's what you're thinking. You're thinking go to college so that you don't have to deal with that type of stuff.
And in your brain, you're thinking about shop class from the 1970s.
Right, which is totally
dark,
not
dirty, dingy, dangerous.
Yeah, low paying, but that's not the 21st century.
That's not what it is now.
Yeah, I mean, nowadays, manufacturing jobs or the skilled trade jobs, high paying, high demand, great work environment, tons of opportunities. If anything, I mean, I remember back in the 80s, everybody talked about Japan, and what they called offshoring, right, where companies would do their expansions and stuff in China or Mexico because labor was cheaper there. But now that's all going the other way. It's called reshoring. Now all these companies are bringing these jobs back to America because they're finding out that they just couldn't maintain the quality that they needed to have when it's a Chinese workforce or a Mexican workforce or whatever. These jobs can only be done by Americans. And so we're seeing this massive pullback of jobs back to America, and I don't remember the number off the top of my head, but I mean, it's millions of manufacturing, trade, and medical jobs over the next 1 or 2 decades that right now are going unfilled. And so for anybody just coming into the workforce, I mean, huge opportunities in manufacturing, in the trades, in medicine, nursing. I mean, in Minnesota, we need 20,000 registered nurses between now and 2024.
Yeah. In less than 4 years, we are going to be short 20,000 nurses.
And the beauty of it is, 2-year degree, you're fully qualified to launch into those jobs.
And if you're going to Hutchinson High School, you can get your CNA certificate, which gets you one step closer and helps you get a little bit quicker through that program.
Yep. Yep.
So those are the kind of things. And so when people say, why is the chamber at the high school? Why is EDA at the high school? Why are you spending your time there?
Mm-hmm.
It's because what businesses that you work with and businesses that I work with, what they need the most, it's
the workers.
It's about getting workers, and again, it's about educating students about what options are, what they are. You always say it so very well. They need two things. What is their capacity for understanding?
Oh yeah, their interest and their aptitude.
Interest and aptitude.
Yeah. What are they interested in? What do they like doing? And what do they happen to be good at?
Right. And so we are trying to help with that shift of understanding what is it that is needed in the workforce. Because I tell people all the time, there's a story about how one of the presidents invited the Punch Pizza business person, the owner, from Minnesota to go to one of his speeches. And it was because he had raised the minimum wage that he was paying. And he had one of his workers there with him. A worker who had, what we didn't know at the time, has a 4-year degree in philosophy, has college debt, and although the minimum wage is $12, that's not helping pay off college debt. And so let's make good choices for what we're going to school for, and that to know that there is a path for them, a career path, utilizing those skills. Because psychology can be very important, but if you're not specifically using that, which is usually in the classroom or in an office.
Well, and if there's, I mean, I think for any young person and for moms and dads, I think, we just want to encourage people to think, what's the best fit for the student? What do they like? What do they happen to be good at? Because everybody's good at something. And some people are good at working with their hands. Other people are really good with numbers in their head, and they'd make a great accountant. And if that's the case, go to a university, get an accounting degree. But for a lot of people, it would be more hands-on type things that they enjoy doing and that they're really good at. So it's about what's the best fit for the student, but then also what's the job market? I mean, we can crank out tons and tons of philosophy majors, but if there's no philosophy job on the other end, why are we doing this? And that's what we're having now. We got an oversupply of bachelor's degree and above people, and a shortage of the 2-year technical degree people.
So before we wrap up, and let's just, again, 18% in the state of Minnesota, 18% of the jobs here
4 years and above
require 4 years. And on average, schools are sending 60 to 70% of the kids the first year to college, to a 4-year college.
I mean, it's a huge mismatch between what's being generated on the education side and what the economy is actually demanding.
The other piece that people don't typically understand is that you don't have to have a 4-year degree to have a good paying job and take care of a family.
Not at all. I mean there's welding in Hutchinson, $70,000 a year. And a lot of these machining jobs, other jobs related to that, 40, 50 grand a year to start. And a 2-year degree gets you as a registered nurse. Those are $60,000 a year jobs right out of the gate. And so, and there's dozens and dozens and dozens of examples. I mean, you get into carpentry or plumbing or electrician, they pay a ton of money. And the beauty of it is you don't need to rack up oodles of school debt in order to get qualified to do these jobs. That's the beauty of it.
So thank you very much for joining me today and just kind of helping with some of those myths and helping people understand. So if we get some good paying jobs, that also then leads into additional jobs. That's where we were talking where we get the retail stores, the restaurants, the grocery store that everybody wants, right? That's how we get those. And so instead of going, why is the city doing this? Maybe now people can go, oh, did you know that economic development is doing this? And they're working behind the scenes and we don't always see it, but we're reaping the benefit, on the backside of it.
Exactly right. So I mean, the best thing we can do to fill the shopping mall or to fill the Shopko building or whatever, is create more manufacturing jobs, because that's going to create the demand for, take your pick, restaurant or service business or other retail business or whatever. So I mean, we are working on all the above. We're just being hopefully strategic in how we do it.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you.
Another reason why there's much in Hutch, economic development, Miles Seppelt, thank you so much for joining me today. I hope that you'll join us again next month when we talk on other topics about why there is #much in Hutch. I'm Mary Hodson, President of the Chamber of Commerce. Thank you to KDUZ and of course our producer Adam behind the scenes. We'll see you soon.